Hey everyone, welcome to Open Insights, the podcast where we talk with K-12 leaders about practical innovation, real challenges, and what's actually working in schools and districts. I'm Jon Castillo. My voice might sound a little bit different. I'm stepping in as your host for today's episode. Without further ado, we're joined today by Dr. Ryan Smith, an education leader with more than 20 years in leadership experience across roles like superintendent, assistant superintendent, principal, and he's currently the deputy superintendent in the Bellflower Unified School District. Ryan is also deeply engaged in helping districts think about innovation, culture, and how to use AI responsibly in schools. So, Ryan, I was going to read your entire background, and I won't do that because I won't do you justice. So, Ryan, thanks for being here. And just to get us started, do you mind introducing yourself in your own words and share a little bit about your journey in education and what you're focused on right now?
Well, thank you so much, John. It is wonderful to be here. Really, really blessed for the opportunity, and thank you for making the time. I'm Ryan Smith. I'm the Deputy Superintendent in the Bellflower Unified School District. For those who aren't sure, where is Bellflower? We're located in the Los Angeles area of California. We're probably 20 miles or so, 25 miles from downtown, which if you know anything about LA and LA traffic, that would probably take you 3 hours. No kidding. Uh, I've been working in Southern California in different leadership roles, as you said, John, for well over 20 years now. Makes me feel a little bit old, and I'm not old. And I've had the privilege of serving as a high school assistant principal, high school principal, assistant superintendent. I had the privilege of serving also as a superintendent in Monrovia Unified School District before coming to Bellflower and serving as deputy superintendent, where I've been for the last couple of years. I've also had the honor to lead a lot of different work, a lot of different initiatives. When I was an assistant superintendent in Paramount Unified School District, for example, I led the creation of a new small high school that was meant to kind of answer the question, what can be different for students and student learning experience? And that high school was called Odyssey STEM Academy. And that was a very innovative school that is continuing to do great things today. In my current district, I'm leading our work on artificial intelligence. We've put together a team of collaborators from across our bargaining units, our community, to really come together to talk about how we can leverage AI to improve teaching and learning, but also to enhance productivity while keeping humans at the center of the work. So I'm really excited about that. And then I've got kind of involvement in a whole bunch of other things. Right now I'm also leading our district strategic planning initiative. We have a guiding coalition of almost 45 people who come together once a month to really talk about our district's mission, vision, values, and talk about a framework for the future that will lead us into the future and make sure that we're really guaranteeing some critical things for our students when it comes to graduation outcomes. And all of that work fully aligns with our incredible Board of Education, as well as the vision of our incredible new superintendent, Dr. Aaron Simon. So it's been really great working collaboratively with all of them to bring that vision for students to life.
Ryan, and I'm so glad I gave you the opportunity to introduce yourself because I would definitely have not done you justice. And there's a lot of areas in there that I think we will tackle in today's conversation. But just to kick us off, we're going to do something light. You are still a young pup. But I do want you to think back to your experience in school. If you could choose something nostalgic from when you were in school as a student, to sponsor today's episode, maybe like a favorite cafeteria food, a classroom smell, a piece of technology. What would it be and why?
Something that was very meaningful for me in school was sports and athletics, and honestly, I wouldn't be in this position that I am today without that background and those experiences. And I know that's true of so many of our students today, is that they need something to connect them with school, and they need something to connect them with the adults in the building, teachers, coaches, other staff members, principals. And when students are connected and when they feel like they're a part of something, that sense of belonging is so critical. Students can do anything. And so that was no different for me. And so for me, that connection to school and that brought really a sense of belonging was always sports. I played basketball throughout high school. And when I left high school, I wasn't so sure exactly what it was that I wanted to do. I thought, well, I really like basketball. Maybe I can continue on and become a high school basketball coach. And that actually is kind of the path that I went down once I got into college. And I had some really great mentors and really great people that opened some doors for me that got me into high school coaching. Actually, when I was 18 years old, started coaching freshman basketball at one of the local high schools in San Diego. And then some mentors kind of saw a lot in me and really did a lot for me to help, prepare me for that. And so that changed my entire trajectory. And then I ended up getting a math degree, getting a teaching position, coaching, and then my career really moved from there. So for me, that one thing would be a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and a sense of connection, which is something that's always grounded me as an education leader because I feel that each and every one of our students deserves that exact same feeling and sense when they go through our schools.
As a former high school football coach myself, that resonates deeply. And yeah, as a follow-up question to that, what is maybe one lesson that you learned while coaching that you've carried with you today into your various leadership roles?
There's so many. I've always said the best coaches are really the best teachers. And I think about kind of the opportunities that I had when I was an athlete. But then beyond that, the opportunities that I had to engage with some really fantastic coaches when I was in the coaching game, so to speak, and some of their connections, some of the influences that the coaches that I worked with, go back to John Wooden, Neville Sainer, for example, legendary coach at Poway High School. He was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's backup at UCLA.
I did not know that.
And so, Neville or Coach Sainer introduced me to John Wooden a couple of times. And listening to Coach Sainer was just like listening to Coach Wooden. And so I would say, the thing that I've always carried forward from coaching is that you never give up on a young person. And as coaches, we're constantly trying to make sure that the students that we're working with are going to reach their fullest potential. And so you never ever give up on a young person. You make sure that you're always there. You're always a person that will be there to listen, a person to give critical advice even when they don't want to hear it. And that you do all you can to pour into that person to help them become the best that they're capable of becoming. I've always believed in that. That's something that was given to me when I was a student, a young coach, young educator. Even today in the role I am, my mentors do the same thing, and that's something that I've really worked hard to pay forward.
I think that says a lot about what our leaders, especially those that were former coaches, how they view the world, but also just in education too. Everyone really is in it for the kids and for the students. So I truly appreciate that. Shifting gears a little bit, and I wanna get your perspective on innovation in AI. These are things that are absolutely at the forefront in in our public sphere, in education. We hear this word all the time, innovation. When you think of innovation in a K-12 district, what does that actually mean to you in the day-to-day?
That's a great question. And every educator, I think, and every education leader in particular, I think, has taken a moment to kind of reflect on that very thing. When we say we're innovative or we're building a culture of innovation or we're striving for innovation, what exactly are we talking about? So it's the right question, and it certainly is the right time. I think for me, innovation in schools really it means a couple of things, and I'll connect them hopefully. One, it's not feeling comfortable with where you are and what the results that you're getting. In other words, it's that continuous pursuit of excellence. And excellence is something our superintendent, Dr. Simon here, talks about quite a bit as a core value, is that it's constantly striving to get better and better at what you do and to achieve that state of excellence and its constant pursuit of that. And the reason I connect that to innovation is that in order to do that, you have to break from what's kind of just always been done or those practices that might have gotten you to a certain level. It might keep you at a certain level. But if you're going to raise up and you're going to rise, you have to do something differently in order to do that. So that to me is one critical part and one critical piece to the innovation formula. The other piece is the willingness to be able to make the commitments and to be able to sometimes take some of the heat that comes from being willing to change practice and being willing to try something new. As you know, and I know you've worked and supported school districts for a long, long time now, um, change doesn't always come easy. And sometimes, we as educators, and it's not just educators, people in every facet of life kind of get used to things and get used to doing things a certain way. And so leaders have to have that courage to be able to say, hey, I want to try something different. I want to empower people to feel like they can try something new, venture into new territory that may really take us to another level, that may really help students, but it might not be easy. It might be difficult. It might mean having to pivot away from something or strategically abandon something, or it might not. It might be something that is really, really coherent with previous work. But that spirit, that willingness, is such a critical part of innovation. And then I think that third piece that comes with it is the what. What are you looking at? And right now, in the context that we're in, AI is something that's rapidly changing, not just the education landscape, but the landscape out there in general. And so we're sending students into this world where AI, agentic AI, those kinds of things, everything's evolving so quickly. We really have to make sure that we're able to make some changes and shifts now to be able to say that the graduate that we're going to hand a diploma to in June or next June or the June after that is going to be fully capable and ready with all the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to be successful in a world that we have no idea what it's going to look like in 4, 5, 6 months, let alone 5, 10 years.
There's a lot of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think AI, this is a perfect segue into our next topic because I think AI is absolutely one of these areas that we need to start getting a little bit more comfortable with because of how uncomfortable it can be. And you've written and you've spoken a lot about AI in schools, even most recently, before we hit the record button on this podcast, hosting a session at AASA in Nashville on AI and HR. What's your basic framework for how leaders should be thinking about AI right now? And then specifically, you're drilling down a little bit further in HR, what do you feel leaders should be thinking about broadly and then maybe more targeted in your specific area of focus?
Yeah, my colleague, Dr. Frank Olmos, and I, we really did have a great time presenting in Nashville at the AASA National Conference on Education. It was a really great opportunity for us to kind of share how we're approaching AI in HR specifically for that topic in Bellflower Unified and beyond with colleagues across the country. What a wonderful opportunity that was. I really love how you framed it, being comfortable, with being uncomfortable is really a great way to kind of describe that. And when we're thinking about AI, and as I've approached this work, number one is the human is at the center of all of it. It's really, really important to remember that AI is a tool to support humans in human work. And AI never should be something that's replacing the real experts, which are humans. So it's a human centered approach to implementing AI and AI design. And the reason why that's so important is one, there's a lot of concern out there, and rightfully so, and understandably so, that AI might replace people or AI might replace, you know, certain types of workers in an organization, whether it's a teacher or whether it's a secretary or anything in between. And those concerns are valid, and we have to understand that. But that's why our framework is so critical. Humans are always at the middle of the work. This work is done for people, and it should be done by people, and everything else should be a support for that endeavor. So that is one real critical thing. The other critical thing is that those tools shouldn't, when it comes to the teaching and learning perspective, AI tools shouldn't be doing the teaching and the learning. They should be a tool for enhancing and personalizing teaching and learning. We don't want students to ultimately become to be put in a position where they're not critically thinking about anything. AI is doing the critical thinking for them, or they're not actually producing a product or a work product or something like that. AI is doing it simply based on a prompt or an agent takes it over or something like that. Humans have to be at the center. Humans have to have knowledge, skills, dispositions, as I mentioned in a previous answer, but they also have to really have command and have that critical lens for the information that AI is producing, but also the knowledge to be able to guide an AI tool to produce something that truly is their work and truly is a product that they can stand behind and could have done entirely on their own. I think the other piece and the final kind of component as far as lenses that we're thinking of this work in really has to do with productivity. And for us, when we're talking about teaching and learning and productivity, they're really two different lanes. Now, there might be a confluence at some point in that conversation, but they really are two different lanes. So for example, AI tools can be used right now to help a teacher generate a lesson plan based on a certain set of standards, based on what type of students or what student needs might be. That's a great example of a tool that is related for productivity. But when it comes to actually in a classroom using AI with students to analyze a document, to develop an argument around a particular take, those kinds of things, that's a very different use of AI. And so it's important in our minds to kind of think through the separation of those two lanes, if you will, to make sure that productivity is one thing, but true teaching and learning and the skills that we're giving students with the use of AI is something entirely different. And we have to be thoughtful about both because both are very important and critical, and there's some intertwining of it.
You mentioned a couple of use cases there. I'm curious about your opinion on this. What's a realistic use case for AI in district operations? Where do you see productivity being boosted by AI in district operations?
Well, I'll give you a good example, and it's kind of a newer direction and more cutting edge even for us. It's something we shared about at AASA as well. Um, is one thing you think about in a school district that has, let's say, 800 employees like we do. Um, you have a lot of evaluation data. For example, every teacher annually needs to be evaluated. Every classified employee annually needs to be evaluated. There might be some exceptions to that, obviously, but generally speaking, annually you have a massive set of data that comes in. Your principals or your managers evaluate their employees. There's some kind of forum. They provide feedback, those kinds of things. And then that ultimately gets submitted to the district. And then think about what happens typically in a district from there. It basically gets filed. And so at what point do district leaders then take a look and go, well, what kind of specific feedback are our principals, managers, directors giving to their employees? Are we analyzing trends? Are we seeing themes? Are we seeing what kind of needs might be there? Are we seeing that everybody seems to be getting kind of okay evaluations, which could be a problem in and of itself too. Not that we don't all have great employees, but that might mean that we're not really honing in on identifying employees that are exceptional, but also having the courage sometimes to identify areas of improvement for employees. So there's a lot of data that really can be gleaned, and AI is a tool that can really be used to help make that happen. And then to be able to give you analysis of trends, identification areas that you can use to go back and help principals with giving better feedback that teachers can actually use and implement and act on. Or you could use it to develop a professional development plan if you're noticing a common theme that for example, all of our classified assistants or secretaries really could use additional support with using AI tools to help kind of make their day-to-day routines much easier, then that's a great use of identifying what targeted professional development we could use. And then you could also then look at it by site, grade level. The opportunity there is tremendous. And so that's one good example that I think not only are we really excited about, and we're starting to kind of venture down the road, but we hope other districts are kind of thinking in those ways as well, because this can help us with, number one, providing better service to students, parents, and families, and also our own colleagues who we lead, support, and supervise. But then number two, it can also really allow us time to be able to do some of the most critical work that we're all assigned to do, that sometimes, because our plates are so large, we don't get to give the proper focus and attention.
That's going to ring true for a lot of district administrators, not just in California, but across the country. And I'm curious for your perspective on this too, just about the reality of the implementation of AI now. You mentioned a couple areas where we don't want students and staff to get too comfortable using the tool or relying on AI to do the thinking for them. But I'm curious, what do you feel will be the hardest part of the AI implementation in K-12 now?
Think there are a couple areas that are challenging that districts have to be thoughtful about. Number one is getting started. How if you haven't gotten started, how do you get started? And so sometimes, there can be a lot of concern about, gosh, we're overwhelmed. We don't know quite where to jump in. We don't know quite where to start. And so my advice there would be just get something going. Find early adopters, find some champions out there that you know or know of or might know of that are starting to use it, and start working with that group and start kind of building a conversation from there. One thing that I'm really excited about in our own district, and again, this comes from the vision not only of our board, but also from our superintendent, is the idea of being intentional and collaborative. And so we put together an AI design team, which has our teachers and staff that are administrators, that are classified staff, teaching staff, and we have a facilitator that's really working with this core group to start working through what will Bellflower's framework be for implementing AI. So I think that's a great approach, and I highly recommend that to any other district that might be thinking about how can we kind of launch, get started, or bring together these kind of disparate folks that are maybe doing some things to help make sure that we're starting to get down the same road. I think the other piece that districts really have to be careful of is not getting caught up in the vast amount of tools that exist out there, and there are plenty. And you can get really lost in it. And it seems like there's a new AI tool out there, you know, being produced or pitched every single day. And so if you get caught up in, we have 50 different AI tools that we think we might use or are going to be great supports, you have so much dissonance because you have so many tools, or there's so much interest in tools. It's very hard to focus, and it's very hard to support and plan and give professional development. And so I would encourage districts to really hone in on what are the one, maybe two tools that are really the most critical for moving this work forward. And I would highly recommend that whatever tool is chosen be some kind of enterprise tool that the district potentially might already be using. So for example, many districts are Microsoft districts. So Copilot and its blend of tools might be something that makes a lot of sense because you already have a data use agreement with Microsoft, that kind of thing. In our case, we're a Google district. And so we use Gmail and all of those things. And so Gemini and the AI for Educators suite that comes with Gemini and through Google makes a lot of sense for us as well because it's a closed system. We're not using an external partner or an external tool like a Chat GPT, which can which could bring some issues for privacy and things like that, since it's not an enterprise client for the district. So those are a couple of areas in particular that I think are really critical and that can be challenging. And I'd say maybe the final one is what is the teaching framework going to look like? What will the framework that we follow in terms of our progression with teaching students how to use AI? So this way they don't, they're not subservient to AI. They're actually using AI to produce what they want, what they can do is really critical. And some of those questions start, with like simple things. At what age should students start using generative AI? Should be third grade, first grade, kindergarten, fifth grade. A real good and powerful, strong collaborative conversation needs to be had about those kinds of things. And then from there, the framework should really indicate, all right, so let's say, we're comfortable with some usage of AI in grade 3. Okay, well, what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that a third grader should have? And then what does that look like in fourth grade to fifth grade to sixth grade, all the way up through high school? So you can clearly see on the framework and in the roadmap how we're going to be supporting students through that journey.
There's so much there, Ryan. And I think one of the areas that I want to tackle on, and kind of going back to what you had said earlier, was we want to keep humans at the center of this. And I think that with AI, we should absolutely be thinking about that now and what that looks like in the future. From your perspective, as a district leader, I know you and all of your executive cabinet, district administration, all focused on what systems are we building now that will be in place even as, and you've written about this extensively, even as leaders transition from the district or from different positions. Out of curiosity, what with AI 10 years from now, what do you want Bellflower Unified to look like with the use of AI and AI adoption, that you would be proud of, looking back?
You're so right. You think about, leadership and leadership roles in school districts. And part of the reason why that collaboration and those relationships are so important and that the work that is done isn't done in isolation is exactly what you kind of touched on. Is if it's going to be meaningful and if it's going to be long lasting, then a real strong effort has to be made for to bring people along with that work. It doesn't mean you stop the work, you take forever to launch the work. All I'm saying is that the power of the relationships in connecting with people throughout a school district and a school community and involving them in the process is so critical, because then that builds that inherent buy-in that is really necessary, not so much always to launch an initiative or to launch work, but to sustain it is so critical, and the question about, what would we hope for in 5, 10 years? Um, our Board of Education, this vision has really started with them. Really high expectations for wanting our district to be really a leader in education and in innovation and in areas like AI. And our new superintendent, Dr. Simon, has that exact same vision, about wanting Bellflower to lead the way. And so for me, as I think, if, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, if I'm not blessed to be continuing in Bellflower because I moved on to do something else, but even if I'm still here, I would love to be able to look back and see that, wow, people are asking about what we're doing. People are interested in studying the work that we're doing, and that in some way, we're leading in this space along with some of the others that are out there, because that's good for our teachers and staff. That's good for our parents and students, but it's also really good for our community. There's a lot of pride that comes in when a community feels like, wow, the school district we have is kind of cutting edge. And the school district we have, other people are trying to come and find out about the work that they're doing. That's just a great, great place for a school district to be in. And I know that's where our board and superintendent would like to see us be. And that's what we're striving to be.
The hairs on the back of my neck are sticking up from that. I truly appreciate that, and I love that. Before we wrap, is there anything that you'd like to plug, maybe point people towards, or leave our listeners with? It could be a resource, something that you've written, maybe some food for thought out on the web that you are ingesting right now. But curious, what what do you want to ask or leave our audience with before we wrap up here?
Well, I'm happy to connect with colleagues from anywhere at any time. I think we're always better when we're connected with one another and when we reach out and really tap into our knowledge, expertise, and experiences. That's something that I've really strived to do in my own career and continue to do. And so I would encourage anybody that's interested in the work that we're doing or would like to talk through some of these things. I would encourage anybody to feel free to reach out to me here at Bellflower Unified. I also have my own website. I appreciate you, John, for mentioning. I have written quite a bit of things on a whole bunch of topics related to education, but www.briandsmithedd.com is a place where I've curated a lot of resources, and I would love to continue the conversation there. But I want to thank you and thank you for the opportunity for this kind of showcase to have this discussion because that means a lot and it contributes a lot to the work that's out there. And my hope is that a conversation like this and future conversations that you and your colleagues have continues to kind of push the real positives that are happening in education and really, really push to help educators work together to really do innovative things for students because bottom line is our students deserve the absolute best. And it's these types of forums that allow us to shine a light on what's happening out there, but also motivate us to keep on going.
Go to Ryan's website and you will love what you read. And there's a lot of really good information out there, articles that he's written. I strongly recommend it. And remember, when you get there, students first. Thanks for joining us and sharing your practical perspectives and your vision for the future. And to everyone listening, thanks for spending time with Open Insights. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our other conversations with real world stories and lessons from other K 12 leaders. So for today, thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.